Hi everybody, this is probably the video you've been waiting for since you caught the news that I've picked up a next-gen Xbox Series S. How well does DayZ run at night? Now, before we kind of get into the meat and potatoes, there's a few things you've got to bear in mind with this. The first thing is that this video you're watching, this capture, unfortunately is only captured at 720p 60 frames a second. I can't capture at 1080p 60 frames a second, which is what the Series S is pushing into my television, so you're not really getting the full view. So the best way to view the video is view it at full screen and then go to the YouTube settings and make sure it's on best quality. Also, the video is obviously captured onto my laptop, and then I have to edit it. And then it is rendered again before it's uploaded to YouTube, and so you've got a couple of rendering processes there that will also reduce the clarity, reduce the resolution, make it a little bit muddy if you like. The next thing to remember, and this is a really important one, is that the version of DayZ that I'm playing here on the Series S is the same version of DayZ that would be on an Xbox One or an Xbox One S or an Xbox One X. It's the same one. There is no special DayZ version yet for the Xbox Series S or the Xbox Series X or the PlayStation 5. So it's running in backwards compatibility mode. And I think this is something we've probably looked over a lot of the time when we've been talking about these things. In the fact that at the moment, what you get on the Xbox Series machines is that you get backwards compatible games, which is games that would run on the Xbox One or the Xbox 360, or there's the occasional original Xbox One, which the majority of the games you're going to play are. Then you'll get some backwards compatibility games that can have a FPS boost, so things like Sniper Elite at a system level get an FPS boost to 60 frames a second, but that's done on a per game basis, and there's only a handful of them. And then you get the Xbox Series S and Xbox Series X enhanced games. So these are new games that come out that basically have two versions. They'll have one that's for the Xbox One or the PlayStation 4, and they'll have one that will be for the PlayStation 5 or the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X. And often they're bundled together. So, for example, with Call of Duty Black Ops, Cold War, if you bought the cross-gen version, you got both versions. But when you're running on an Xbox Series S or X or a PlayStation 5, you get to play that other version. Now, nothing's been done for DayZ yet, though. And by the time you come to watch this video, Bohemia Interactive may have decided to produce a different version of DayZ that can take full advantage of the Series S and Series X or the PlayStation 5. However, so if we put all that to one side, the fact that it's difficult to capture and you're not seeing the full picture, and this is a backwards compatible game we're playing, it plays amazing. Honestly, I think you kind of get used to playing games that are a bit janky at low frame rates. And although I always said that DayZ always run better on the Xbox than the Xbox One, I've got Xbox One S, funny enough, rather than the PlayStation 4, it always seemed to have a higher frame rate. You would always get dips in the frame rate, wouldn't you, when you're going into towns or when you're fighting zombies or going into a truck or something like that. And what I've found with DayZ and the Xbox One S is you get a solid 99% of the time 60 frames a second at 1080p, and what that gives you is it gives the game a whole new depth and immersion that you don't get in lower frame rate games. You may well have seen my PUBG video about this already, and that's another game where there's no special Series S, Series X or PlayStation 5 version. You're just playing the console version in backwards compatibility mode. But those extras, being a solid 60 frames a second, makes a massive difference. It makes the world a lot more 3D, and I know that's probably going to sound a bit stupid, but it really does, and makes a big difference. So I am really impressed with the way that DayZ is running on the Series S. You'll see with the driving, I think I'm driving through Chernogorsk, you know, one of the biggest towns in one of the biggest cities in Chernobyl on DayZ, and it feels very, very safe to drive through it. Well, I'm trying to get up to full speed. Now remember, this is on my own sort of private server, which is very low population and is located in the UK where I am, so the ping will be very low. So I'd imagine if you're on a high pop server, you know, and maybe you're in the UK but you're attached to a server that's in Europe or in the States, you're probably going to get rubber banding, you're probably going to, you know, get crashes and that sort of stuff. But I was very, very impressed with how smooth this is. Running around and simply looting is easy, and one of the best things actually was first person mode, because especially on the PlayStation 4, when you were going to first person mode, you couldn't really do it for that long. And I know on the Xbox One you couldn't really do first person mode for that long, my friend, especially if you're in a built up area like going into interiors of buildings. It would kind of give you a bit of a headache because of the frame drops you'd get. Now you do get the occasional frame drop and hitch in this, and you may have picked up actually when you're watching the video. Sometimes when I'm driving and I'm flicking from third person to first person or zooming in out, you get a slight drop in frames, and also you do get a slight drop, I think, you know, when we're going into another area, you get like this just slight pause. It's not really frame drop, it's just like a slight pause, and then it keeps going, but nowhere near as bad as it was on the PlayStation 4 and on the Xbox One. And I think I would probably be very confident once you get to know the server, you know, whether it's, you know, high pop or not, at driving like at full chat up and down so the east and the west coast, and, you know, getting to the northwest airfield. I mean, generally, I mean, I've done videos about it, haven't I, about driving in DayZ on console, and I basically say don't really get out of second gear, stick at 50 kilometers an hour, and as soon as you get into, you know, even the smallest of villages, knock it down to first gear and crawl around. Where with this you could zoom around a lot, and it would be very good indeed. Fighting zombies is cool. You saw at the beginning the bit about with the binoculars, they seem to zoom in pretty well. There was a little bit of a pause when I zoomed in on the high-rise flats. But the other thing that's really good is it's like the console's maintaining that high resolution all the time. Now, I'm no expert, I guess, but I guess one of the things that games do is when they want to keep the frame rate up, they drop the resolution a bit. But it seems to me like everything just seems that little bit sharper. You know, when you look at the details on the tanks and on the interiors and on the zombies' faces and things like that when you're in a car and they're pressed up against the glass. So I get the same feeling playing DayZ on the Series S, of smoothness and clarity and immersion that I get when I'm playing on my Shadow gaming PC. You know, that 60 frames a second, 1080p, constant, solid frame rate just makes a big difference. And it's really interesting because I remember as well when the new consoles were announced and they were talking about PUBG and talking about DayZ, especially PUBG, they were saying, look, yeah, okay, brilliant. So with the next generation of consoles, you're going to get PUBG at 1080p, 60 frames a second. And we were like, what? That's rubbish. You know, we want more than that. We want 144 frames a second. But honestly, especially if you're playing on a TV like me that can't go above 60 frames a second anyway, I just play on a 1080p, 60 frames a second telly, it looks amazing. And it looks so much better. In fact, the other thing, and I will do this in other videos as well, on well-optimized games like Call of Duty, you don't actually notice much of a difference, and Destiny is another one. Destiny 2, for example, has a dedicated, basically has a different version for the Xbox One, for the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X. But because from what I remember anyway, playing it used to run so well on the PlayStation 4 anyway. When I played it on the Series S, I didn't really notice because I guess it was probably chugging along at 60 frames a second most of the time anyway on the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One. So when you come over to games, you know, so then when I play that on the Xbox Series S, but it's a steady 60 frames a second, I don't really notice that much difference. So there we go. I'll leave you with the rest of the gameplay of me just running around and driving and stuff like that. But how does DayZ play on the Xbox Series S? Incredibly well. Solid 1080p, solid 60 frames a second. Feels like you're playing on a high-end gaming rig. Fantastic. And fingers crossed Well, do the Bohemia Interactive really need to take out a different version? I don't think they do, to be honest. I don't think they do. But what it does show you is that the hardware can definitely hold up to having mods. You could definitely have helicopters. You could definitely have armor on this, Armor 3, 100%. And that would be very, very cool indeed. Anyway, that's enough from me now. If you've got any questions about stuff you want to see on the 1S, any things you want me in particular to test, put your questions in the comment section down below. If you've liked the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. And I'll, of course, see you again soon.